Welcome, everyone. Let's get started on how I will help you learn how to elevate your steak cooking game at home. Today, we are going to be focusing on the three main types of steaks: the filet, the New York, and the infamous ribeye. The filet is the most tender of the cuts, but it has the least amount of flavor. In the cooking world, we call flavor fat, and when there's more fat, there is more flavor. Because the tenderloin runs along the spine of the cow, the muscle isn't worked out as much as the other cuts. This makes it the least flavorful but the most tender, almost like a melt in your mouth feeling. This cut will most likely have a sauce or a rub on it. The New York is a stable steak and is in between flavor and tenderness, which is why it's one of the more cheaper steaks to purchase. This steak goes really well with a sauce or a rub just as an accompanying feature of the steak. The ribeye is the fattiest steak with the most flavor. If you have a great cut and an awesome marbling, you only need to put salt and pepper on the steak to make it flavorful. You could pair it with a nice sauce, but it will take away from the flavor of the meat itself. There are many different types of cooking temperatures when you cook a steak, and it is all about personal preference. There are a few key things to note when you do cook a steak. One major thing is to remember that there will always be a carryover cooking time and when you need to let the meat rest. And you should let the steak rest for at least 10 minutes after cooking it to your desired temperature. This will ensure that the meat will retain as much juices and moisture before you cut into it. When you see garlic cloves in the pan with herbs, this is what is being infused into the oil with the meat. This is a great way to add a little bit of extra flavor layers on your steak dish. This is a special trade secret in the chef world. Typically, the ribeye will be the one to cook this specific cooking method, but you could also see it being done with a filet. It just needs a little bit longer time to do so. This is sort of a basting method of cooking your steak, where you put more than the normal butter in the pan or cast iron and use a spoon to constantly pour the butter on top of the steak. Normally, you'll see garlic cloves and herbs that will infuse with the butter for more flavor. Herbs like thyme and rosemary are the ones that you'll typically see. Sauces are a great way to add extra flavor to your steaks and really add that wow factor. There are many different kinds, like garlic butter drizzle, and even using this basting method with a brown butter sauce. But the one that I typically like is called the chimichurri sauce. This is a special fresh sauce that is made from Argentina. And it is made out of really fresh ingredients like parsley, cilantro, garlic, olive oil, pine nuts, and they're all chopped fine in either a blender or a pestle and mortar. A couple other really great sauces that are amazing with the filet are a classic mushroom demi, which is basically a sauce that has an earthy flavor that will bring out the deliciousness of the meat. And also, one of my favorite classic French dishes, which is called the steak au poivre, which is heavy on the peppercorns, but when cooked in the cream, it has a really nice subtle flavor to it that really brings out the flavorfulness of the meat. And you will also see that you just other accompaniments to the steak dish is included is what's known as compound butter. These butters can have many different ingredients inside, so it's best to just make something that you like. Classically, you will typically see a mixture of parsley, garlic, lemon zest, and tarragon in most compound butters. You would just need to let it melt on top right before you serve the steak. so it gets all melty and delicious. It's almost like using it as a sauce when you're making your wonderful steak. Personally, when I make my steaks, I only like to use rosemary or thyme. When I am cooking these, they're typically used for only aromatics. These are the best flavors that will go with your meats. You can also add things like tarragon or parsley at the end, but I would stay away from those. Um, you should also stay away from getting any over the counter steak sauces um, with things like A1 or Heinz 57 unless it's a really bad steak or you get something from Sherry's. And if you must do any sort of seasoning other than salt and pepper, please only stick to what we like to use in the industry, which is Montreal steak seasoning. It is the only type of seasoning that chefs trust for our meats. On that note, that's everything I need to tell you about steaks. I hope I gave you a little bit of more information on how to elevate your steak game.